In the rolling hills of the South African countryside stood an old Victorian house abandoned for decades. Local legend whispered that the house was cursed, and its dark history was enough to keep anyone from approaching it. But curiosity often outpaces caution, and for the intrepid journalist Sarah, the mystery of the house was irresistible. Sarah had traveled to the house to investigate its eerie reputation for her next article. As she walked through the overgrown garden and up the creaking steps, the air grew heavy with an unsettling stillness. The grand foyer was cloaked in shadows, and the once beautiful decor was now decayed and cobwebbed. Despite the decay, the house seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. That night, Sarah set up her equipment and decided to spend the night in the house to capture any paranormal activity. She wandered through the dimly lit rooms, her footsteps echoing off the walls. Everything was as she had expected. Old furniture covered in dust, and the distant sound of the wind howling through broken windows. As midnight approached, Sarah settled in the old library, the most reputedly haunted room. She was reviewing her notes when she heard it, an eerie whispering from the darkness. The sound was faint but unmistakable, a soft, guttural voice calling her name. Sarah. Her heart raced, and she tried to dismiss it as a trick of her imagination. But the voice came again, clearer and more insistent. Sarah. The air in the room grew colder. Sarah's breath formed small clouds as she scanned the room with her flashlight. The whispering grew louder, as if the sound was coming from the other side of the walls. She could hear the voice distinctly now, pleading and sorrowful. Sarah, help me. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Sarah followed the sound. It led her to a hidden door she had missed earlier, concealed behind a faded tapestry. She forced it open and descended into a narrow, dusty staircase leading to a forgotten cellar. The cellar was small and claustrophobic, with walls lined with old, brittle portraits and shelves filled with ancient, rotting books. In the center of the room was a solitary, old-fashioned mirror, its glass cracked and smeared with grime. The whispering was now a cacophony of desperate pleas and anguished cries. Sarah approached the mirror, feeling a chill as the voice grew frantic. The glass of the mirror began to fog up as if someone on the other side was trying to communicate. In the misty reflection, Sarah saw shadows moving, shadows that took the form of twisted, anguished faces. Suddenly, the mirror shattered, and from the fragments, a spectral figure emerged, a gaunt, ghostly apparition with hollow eyes and a twisted mouth. The spirit, a former resident of the house, had been trapped in the mirror, calling out for help. Sarah stumbled backward, but the spirit reached out, its cold, ethereal hand grasping her wrist. The force of the touch was paralyzing. The room seemed to close in on her as the spirit's mournful wail filled her ears. In a final, desperate attempt to escape, Sarah struggled against the spirit's grip. But as she did, she realized that the whispers had changed. They were no longer pleading for help, but echoing her own name with a mocking, sinister tone. The spirit's eyes locked onto Sarah's, and she felt a searing pain as the entity's malevolence seeped into her. The final thing Sarah saw before everything went dark was the mirror, now whole again, reflecting her own terrified face. The next morning, the house was silent once more, and Sarah was nowhere to be found. Her camera, still recording, captured only the distorted shadows of the spirit. The townsfolk found the house undisturbed, but Sarah's name was scratched into the walls of the cellar, written in an unknown, trembling hand. The old Victorian house stood abandoned once more, its curse unbroken. It was a dark monument to the spirits that lingered within, eternally calling out to anyone foolish enough to answer.